The porch groaned beneath Eleanor's boots, a long, aching creak that carried into the dry wind. The boards were warped, split open like old scars, but they held. A door hung crooked on one hinge, swaying with every gust, tapping against the frame like a warning she wasn't meant to ignore. She pushed it open. The smell struck her first, dust, rot, and the faint trace of smoke baked deep into the rafters. A house left too long without breath. Her hand brushed along the wall and came away gray, powdered with years. She stepped inside, each footfall stirring up tiny storms that rose in the slanted light, bleeding through the shutters. A whisper of fabric. Movement. Her body stiffened, and her fingers slid to the rifle at her shoulder. The room ahead sat in shadow, furniture draped in cobwebs, chairs overturned as though the family had fled mid-supper. The sound came again, soft, deliberate. "Who's there?" Her voice cut into the gloom, sharper than she felt inside. From a far side of the room, a shape shifted. Slowly, a figure rose from behind the old hearth, pale as moonlight against the soot. A girl, ragged dress clinging to her, hair tangled like the desert's thorn bush. Eyes, clear, wide, unblinking, locked onto Eleanor's face. She didn't flinch, didn't shy. She simply spoke. "You're going to have sex with me." The words dropped heavy in the silence, strange and raw, louder than the wind rattling outside. Eleanor froze, the rifle half raised, caught between disbelief and the pounding in her chest. The girl stepped closer, bare feet silent on the splintered floorboards. Her voice carried no hesitation, no tremor, as though she'd rehearsed the line for years. Dust swirled around her ankles, rising with each movement like smoke. Eleanor's throat tightened. She tightened her grip on the rifle. "What did you say?" The girl's stare did not break. "I've been waiting." A shutter banged against the window frame, hard enough to splinter. Sunlight flashed across the girl's face, skin untouched by the sun, lips cracked but steady, eyes holding a hunger that wasn't earthly. She was young, too young to be here alone, too untouched by the desert to have survived it. The silence pressed in. The wind outside carried the distant howl of coyotes, a reminder of how empty the land was beyond these walls. Yet here stood this girl, impossible, undeniable. Eleanor lowered the rifle by a fraction, not trust but shock easing her stance. The house moaned in its bones. The girl tilted her head, watching her like a hawk watches a rabbit, patient, certain. The widow swallowed the dryness in her throat. The ranch was supposed to be empty, forgotten, left to rot. Instead, it had been waiting, harboring something, someone who spoke like prophecy. And for the first time in years, Eleanor felt the land itself breathe beneath her feet. The lantern hissed as Eleanor struck the match, the flame clawing against the dark. Shadows leapt across the cracked walls, stretching long arms over the rafters. The girl sat at the table, motionless, her eyes catching the light like glass. "You've been waiting," Eleanor said, her voice sharp, her hands steadying the lamp. The girl nodded once, slow, deliberate. "For you. For the owner. For the one who belongs here." Eleanor's jaw tightened. She glanced at the broken shelves, the dust-choked corners, the sagging roof. Belonging was a word that hadn't touched her in years. "What do you mean?" The girl's lips parted. "This house is bound. So am I. I've kept myself, until the right one came back." Outside, a coyote howled, long and mournful, answered by another deeper in the canyon. Eleanor's shoulders tensed. She shifted her grip on the rifle propped against the chair. "You expect me to believe you've lived in this ruin alone? That you've been waiting for me?" The girl's stare did not waver. "The land does not let go. Neither do I." The wind pushed hard against the shutters, slamming them against the frame. The lantern light guttered, shadows snapping across the girl's face. For a moment, she looked carved from stone, her features too still, too sure. Eleanor turned toward the window. A flicker, movement in the distance, just beyond the corral. Riders, faint silhouettes against the rim of moonlight. She felt the prickle of being watched. Her heart beat faster. "They've come before," the girl whispered, following Eleanor's eyes. Men who claim what isn't theirs. Men who drove you from here once. They circle back when they smell weakness. Eleanor gritted her teeth. I buried weakness long ago. Silence pressed heavy between them. Dust lifted from the floorboards, swirled by a draft sneaking onto the door. The girl leaned forward, her voice low, urgent. If you leave again, it all dies. Not just this land. Not just me. You lose what was promised. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the rifle stock, the wood worn smooth by hands that weren't hers. Her husband's hands. She remembered his voice, steady, full of plans for cattle and fences, long before greed and bullets left her a widow. The ache returned, raw as ever. The girl's gaze pierced her. Stay, or they'll burn it clean, and nothing will be left for you. Nothing but bones. A horse snorted outside, the sound carrying sharp through the night. The riders were closer now. The ranch seemed to breathe with them, walls groaning, the wind rattling in its chest. Eleanor rose, rifle in hand, the lantern casting her shadow tall across the wall. Her grief was still there, heavy as iron, but so was the fire rising behind it. The girl did not move. She only whispered, as if reciting a vow. The secret is buried here, and it waits for you. The saloon doors slammed open, wind whipping grit across the floorboards. Boots thundered in, spurs clinking sharp. Laughter followed, low and mean, rolling from the men who filled the room like smoke. The Baron's riders. At the counter, whiskey sloshed into glasses, the amber glow trembling in the lamplight. The piano stuttered, keys struck wrong as the players' eyes darted to the newcomers. The townsfolk kept their heads down, shoulders hunched, silence spreading thicker than dust. Widows back on her land. One rider spat, voice rough as gravel. Baron says we smoke her out this time. Make sure she don't come crawling back again. Their laughter cracked through the room, hard as gunfire. Miles away, the ranch groaned beneath the storm rolling in. Dust sheets swept across the yard, slamming into the corral rails. Eleanor stood in the yard, coat whipping against her legs, eyes narrowed against the grit. In her hands, the rifle gleamed, oiled and ready. She'd spent hours at the table cleaning it, fingers blackened with soot, mind steadying with each piece set back into place. From the porch, the girl watched, her face unreadable in the lantern's glow. They'll come at dawn, she said, the words flat, certain. They'll ride hard, thinking you're broken. Eleanor pulled the bolt back, the click echoing in the night air. Then they'll learn different. The girl stepped down into the dust, bare feet leaving prints that vanished almost instantly in the wind. She pointed toward the north fence. Your husband hid bullets under the posts. He knew one day they'd return. Eleanor followed, crouched, hands digging into the dry earth. Would splinters bit her fingers as she pried the post loose. A tin box glinted beneath, packed with cartridges. She stared, heart hammering, the girl's voice curling behind her like smoke. The land remembers. She worked through the night, mending rails, stacking crates for cover, lining cartridges in neat rows across the porch rail. Every creak of the boards, every snap of the wind, set her nerves alight. The storm thickened, sky heavy, stars swallowed in dust. The girl moved with her, guiding, silent more often than speaking, her pale hands brushing against hidden caches Eleanor would never have found alone. Lantern light cut across her face, and for moments she seemed less flesh than shadow, less girl than echo. By midnight, the ranch stood like a fortress of ghosts. Eleanor wiped her brow, sweat streaking through the grit, chest tight but steady. She looked to the girl, who only watched her with those wide, unblinking eyes. You're not afraid, Eleanor said. The girl tilted her head, the faintest smile breaking across her lips. Fear belongs to them, not to us. Thunder rolled low in the distance, not from the sky, but from hooves pounding the canyon floor. The riders were coming. Eleanor lifted the rifle, the storm at her back, the land breathing through her bones. Gunfire cracked against the dawn, tearing through the stillness like lightning splitting sky. Dust exploded from the corral posts as bullets slammed into the ranch. Horses screamed, riders hollered, spurring forward in a storm of hooves and steel. Eleanor braced against the porch rail, rifle snug against her shoulder. She fired. The first rider pitched sideways, crashing into the dirt, his horse veering wild. She shifted, pulled again, the recoil biting in her bones. Another fell. The wind carried grit across her eyes, but she did not blink. Every shot was true. The girl's voice whispered beside her ear, though she hadn't moved, hadn't spoken aloud. Left. By the trough. Eleanor swung, fired. The man near the water trough folded, dust swallowing him whole. The Baron's men scattered, taking cover behind fence rails and half-broken wagons. Pistols flashed, rifles barked. Wood splinters flew from the porch posts around Eleanor's head. She ducked, heart hammering, then rose again to return fire. Through the haze of smoke and dust, the Baron himself emerged, broad-shouldered, his hat low, his revolver gleaming. He strode forward while his men faltered, his voice cutting sharp over the chaos. "Widow," he bellowed, "this land was never yours. Best die quick and leave it clean." Eleanor's jaw locked. Her hands were steady, steadier than they had any right to be. The girl stood at her side, silent, eyes glowing with something older than fear. The Baron lifted his revolver. Eleanor stepped into the open yard, rifle raised, dust curling around her boots. Time thinned. The world shrank to the breath between them. The girl's whisper slid through her mind. "He thinks you're broken. Show him what you've always been." The Baron drew first. Flames spit from his barrel. Eleanor's shot split the same moment. His bullet carved through her sleeve, tearing fabric and skin. Hers struck deep, driving him back. He staggered, eyes wide, revolver slipping from his hand before he fell to the dirt. Silence followed. The riders froze, staring at their fallen leader. One by one, they turned their horses, retreating into the canyon, swallowed by the rising sun. Eleanor stood in the dust, breath heaving, rifle lowered but not dropped. The ranch held its silence like reverence. She turned. The girl was watching her, face soft now, fading at the edges like smoke on the wind. Eleanor blinked, and the truth struck deep. The girl's face was her own, younger, untouched. The woman she'd been before grief hollowed her, before bullets carved her life in two. "You were me," Eleanor whispered. The girl smiled faintly, lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came. She dissolved with the wind, leaving only dust in her place. Eleanor stood alone, rifle in hand, dawn burning over the land. The porch creaked, the ranch breathed, and when the wind rushed through the canyon, it carried an echo, her own younger voice, forever bound to the soil she had reclaimed.